Hello and welcome. Now we'll be doing exercise to building this model. The first model is formula based model, which I will also call it simple model. So I'm not using Power Query or Excel VBA in this particular exercise. So this is a simple formula based model. But I would recommend few VBA codes to be used in this particular model, which are very easy to understand and it is really convenient. But this is totally optional. You may choose not to use it at all. I would highly recommend you to follow along with me. And to do that, I have provided a blank copy of this particular model, which is available in the resources section for you to download. Now we are in the first tab, which is called control panel, where I have a small table which has key inputs. Now these yellow cells are hard-coded inputs which you have to put manually, but this model is for number of years, so you have to do only once when you start building this model. As you can see in C5, cell C5, there is a start year. So this is the year from which the model will start operating in your financial and account department, and C6 contains the number of years for which you want to use this particular model, right? So you might use for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or even 10 years, you can use it. Not only you can expand the actual number of columns and rows, and I will explain you how you can do that when we do the exercise. Now C7, cell C7 has a drop down menu which is data validation for number of months, which is Jan to December. So this is for fiscal year or financial year based on your region or country. So for me it is January, so I will be starting from January. And if you have another financial or fiscal year start month, you can choose accordingly, April or suppose June, and accordingly you can choose here. So we'll keep it here January for now. Now cell C8 contains start date of the model from which the month end will start. So for example, January is my first month of the year in fiscal year Jan to December, which is also calendar year, and I would like to start the calculation at end of the month for all the prepayments that happen in that particular month. Similarly, if you have April as your first year, you would want to calculate the prepayment at end of April, because usually the accounts and books of accounts are closed at end of the month. So that's the reason we want this particular date automatically calculated from based on these two inputs, which is in C7 and C5. So here I have used end of the month formula, which I have explained before. It derives the end of the month date from a date. Now for us, this is not going to be straightforward. We don't have actual date. We need to derive this date for end of the month formula, which is start date and end of the month. Now we want end of the month for this particular month only, so we won't be having any increment, so it would be 0 as a second argument, which is months here. And start date is the one which will be calculated based on inputs in cell C5 and C7. Now as I told you, we don't have a straightforward date here which is required for end of the month to calculate that particular output. Now we do have a year and month, so we can use a formula called date formula. Now for the date formula you require 3 arguments, which is year, month and day. Now we do have a year as a number in cell C5, but we don't have month and date as output readily available to use in this formula. So to do that, we'll be requiring another formula called month, which will be for the month number calculation. And in that we'll require a date value function to convert this particular date into actual date, because unless you do that, this particular function will not work and you cannot arrive at your desired output. Now this looks quite complicated, so to explain you in very simple manner, I have created this particular table. We'll be linking each function and deriving this particular date. Now we want to achieve a month number because we require a month number, right, which is actual serial number, which is 1 to 12. So if, for example, if I type here month, it returns number from 1 January to 12 December. Now we want to achieve from this particular text value, right? This is not actual date, this is a text. For Excel it will consider as a text range, but we want to convert this particular text range into actual number. So April should be equal to 4, May should be equal to 5, and similarly Jan should be equal to 1. So we want to do that based on this particular formula. So to do that we need a date value function, and also in that we need a small trick in that. So to do that we'll type date value function, which you can see the syntax converts the date in form of to text to number that represents date in Microsoft Excel date table code. So simply it converts a tax date into actual date. Now let's try to convert this so you will better understand how this particular function works. So if I put date value and select this particular cell C7, it will generate an error because it still requires some form of date recognition which this formula understands. So to do that, we have to add some form of number or numerical operator along with this particular tax. So to do that, we'll be adjoining this particular cell C7, which is January for us now, with a number like first or second or third date, because we want a particular date here. So I'll be joining n% and 1 with that because I want the 1st of January. And if I press enter now, we want to use this particular output for date value in a month function. So if I type month here and select this particular date, it will give me 1. Why? Because month derives the number of that particular month in that date, which was January, right? So if I change here to Feb, I'll get 2. If I change to April, I get 4. Similarly, if I change to October, I'll get 10. And why we need this? To use in this particular date formula where we need this month serial number. So now if we complete this date function, we'll be selecting year for cell C5, which we already have as input. Month will be selecting from month formula, which is the output of this month function. And day we can put any date, arrive at the end of the month. So I just put 1 here, which you can put directly in the formula. So you can see this is simplified version and this is more of a nested function, which is combined into one formula. So end of the month, date, start date would be this particular date from this date function, date 2017, 10 and 1. And we don't want to move any month. So we want end of the month date for that particular date, which would be 1st October. And the end of the month for 1st October is 31st October, which you got here. Now let's change it to January because our model will be based on Jan to December calendar year. Now as I explained before, I want end of the month of January because that's where my first month of my 2017 accounting will start, and I'll start the bookkeeping at end of the month. And since this is 5-year model, so it will end at end of the 5th year. So for example, if I take this particular model and run for 60 months, which is 5 years, it should end on 31st December 2021. Now to explain you very simply how it's gonna work, let's put this number of years to 1 only here. And as you can see, it will run for 12 months, including the January month. So Jan to December, if you're going to amortize from Jan to December, January will be your first month and December will be your last month. So accordingly, 12-month period is calculated here for one number of years. Based on your date selection, of course. If I choose April as a start year, it will end in March 2018. So April 2017 will be my first year of prepayment calculation, and March will be my last month of that particular prepayment. Now from next lecture, I'll be starting with the actual prepayment calculation in our first example, prepayment health insurance. So I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.